It's the Spill the Wine Show podcast. Hi, everybody. This is your host, Leroy Wine Guy Guilford, and this is episode number 12. This is a lovely, you might say, late winter, early spring afternoon, and we're sitting on the lovely wine club area of the veranda at one of my favorite places, as you all know, Chapin Family Vineyards. And oh my gosh, my guest right now, John Ferrera, he and I, John, grab your glass of wine. As you know, we never do a show without, we got to get to it where we can hear it with the microphones. There we are. Never do a show without sipping some wine. So I have to tell you what we're sipping on. Yes, we're at Chapin Family Vineyards, and we did start with some yummy Chapin wines, but I have to tell you, being the connected in the wine media of sorts, occasionally wineries get a hold of me and say, would you like to try some of our new wines? Well, the folks up at Bonnie Doon Vineyards and off the Central Coast are doing a special promotion on this wine. It's a 2021 Peak Pool. Yeah, Picpoul. It's a lovely and interesting white. It's a French grape you don't find in many, many places, and they're doing a beautiful job of growing it up on the Central Coast. They sent me this yummy, what I would call light lemon chiffon wine. What do you think? Does that kind of fit the bill there?
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Okay. Well, we're going to de-sipping that while we tell you. Yes, you are hearing some cars go by on Warren Avenue, the upper end of Rancho California Road, for those who know Southern California and our Temecula Valley wine country. We're right next to our lovely Syrah and Cabernet vineyards here at Chapin Family Vineyards. And we're going to be talking with John about his journey, to his inspiration to, if you want to come out to wine country and at just a touch of a little few things on your phone, figure out who's where, what, when they're open, the whole kinds of things. Matter of fact, it's his special guide he's created. It's called Anco Mobile Guides. That's his company, ANNCO. And he can connect you to wineries, breweries, distilleries, bars, casinos, and all kinds of fun local destinations. Now, there are a number of other things in the market, but there's always the better mousetrap, right? And I believe we've stumbled across something you're going to love, the better mousetrap, if you will. So, John, welcome to Spill the Wine.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's touch a little, give me a little quick thumbnail sketch. Okay, this is an all-self-designed, soon-to-be app, but certainly your website, which is www.annco.com, and it loads up on your phone, super friendly and intuitive. And then we'll touch ground on your background, because you've been a guy who's been in marketing, especially on the digital end of things, for many, many years. So fire away.
Yeah, well, I got involved in the internet probably 1995. So that was my intro to it. It was pretty elementary at the time. Nobody knew what was going on. So we kind of figured it out. But as time evolved, I got into building apps and creating websites. And then I moved to Temecula. And my whole life changed. It was beautiful.
I have to back up, because one of the things, the place where you started, you can't get away from it because it's still in that accent. You are Italian, from an area that is Italian, rather, in,
New York.
New York, right?
I'm a New York boy, yeah. I came out via Vegas and then to California.
So let's talk some a bit in the background as we build towards talking about a lot of the details of your app. And folks, as I said, if you want to just do the direct route, www.annco.com, and you push a few buttons and you can see everything you want to know about the local area and all those things, wineries, breweries, distilleries, and maybe even the weather, because right now you can hear the wind. We're getting a nice little breeze here in this beautiful afternoon here in the middle of March. So you wound up, as you shared earlier with me, we were talking, moving from New York and settling in Las Vegas, but you've been an entrepreneur all your life. Why don't you touch on some of those different entrepreneurial things you have done?
Oh, boy. Going way back, I before anything happened on the internet. Everything was brick and mortar. So my first venture was a trucking company. So we set up a trucking company. I got an F-150 cargo van, and I started doing little packages.
And I mean, you started just you and
just
the van
me.
And created a company.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Me and the van. I started going around getting packages, little ones here and there, and it evolved. And before you know it, I had a warehouse at Kennedy Airport. I mean, so it evolved, and I stayed with that for quite a long time until such time I realized, well, I'm not married. I have no kids.
So you sold the biz and you took a leap of faith to Las Vegas, Nevada.
Yeah, what the hell? If I didn't like it, I'd go back. But, I never went back.
Life has some interesting twists and turns, and I would say Providence definitely does. And you ended up meeting your lovely wife in Las Vegas, is that right?
Yeah, well, actually, I think I met her over Iowa because she was a flight attendant with TWA. And I was going back and forth to New York, and she was working the flight. So, yeah, somewhere in there we met.
Okay, so if you're flying at Mach or twice Mach or 3 Mach, whatever the speed is up above, we could say you're a fast mover. Huh?
Yeah. Oh, it was funny because at first she didn't want anything to do with me, but, I turned that around. She figured I was just a guy on the plane hitting on all the flight attendants, which I was.
You were a single guy.
I was a single
35.
guy. Yeah, I was 35 at the time. No, I wasn't married, had no kids, so I was doing what I do.
So this is 1990-ish, and you're in Las Vegas. So, you get married, and you've got, my gosh, time to play around for a little while, but then you had to get serious again and start thinking about making money. So being the entrepreneur you are, where'd you go next?
Well, then I got involved. I came up with a concept which back then nobody even knew about. It was a construction referral service, like an Angie's List.
Right.
But there was no internet. So I started that, and we advertised in the TV guide and everything. And what you did is there was phone number in there. You called us up. We gave you 3 contractors that were already pre-screened, and they have licenses. They were checked out, and that was it. That was like the pre-runner to like Angie's List. And
so you sold that company, but you said it didn't it eventually get snatched up by Angie's List?
Yeah, the people who
That's
sold
a pretty good little resume.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, absolutely. And my partner on that, I think I mentioned to you, was the owner of the Aladdin Hotel at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a good start to get things moving.
So you had some interesting partners along the way.
Yes,
there.
I did.
Business partners, of course.
Yes, I did.
Yes.
And, then I moved along to voice over IP before it really became much.
Right.
And we created a product called Connect to Call. And that product we actually sold to a company called Home Seekers, which they're still, I think, publicly traded, but they were publicly traded when we sold it to them at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the .com crash hit, and their stock went to pennies.
Okay.
But they're still around, but they're like Realtor.com's competition.
So when the late 90s is rolling in, you and I discovered an area where you have a lot of commonality, and that is the RV industry. Yeah, the recreational vehicles, and people know, and I'll give it out as I do all through my show. Yes, I love my 20-plus-year-old email address, myrvguy@aol.com. And hold on, it's live radio, and that's not supposed to happen. Now, hold on, it's a live podcast.
There you go.
Which can always be edited, of course.
You go.
But so anyways, let's run back. I, at the time, had stumbled into this thing where all the years I'd spent in radio on the sidelines and in the grocery business, I took a 3-year time where I was actually full-time employed in advertising sales, and I landed on my feet. It's very common when you work at bigger radio stations in Southern California that You walk into the general manager's office one morning and he had a bad night's sleep and says, "You're fired." So I landed on my feet from the big station I was working on by going to work selling motorhomes for one of the big retailers here in Southern California, Giant RV. And to send people to myself, I knew some kids that were dabbling in the internet, and they created a little website for me called myrvguy.com, and I'd advertise on the talk shows in the morning and send my own customers to me. And lo and behold, you and I don't know it, but I spent some time working in Las Vegas and a little bit of 96 and 97 in the retail grocery industry. And there we are in the same time, and you're planting yourself in the RV business. So talk about that.
Yeah, once I got involved with the internet, I went out and registered a lot of names. But people that know what was going on, I got a lot of good names.
Right.
And one of them was rvsales.com. And so we wanted to put it to work. And we did that. And I came up with a concept too, and I mentioned it to you, Roy. We called it Inspected and Protected. So that when you go to buy a used RV at an RV dealer, the vehicle has been inspected and it had a warranty on it for 6 months. But it was inspected and protected, so you knew you were buying something that was used, but okay,
right.
At least we're covered.
Right.
And that it worked out very well. And then I sold that company.
So, that's what you entrepreneurs do is they climb the ladder, right? You come up with something that's pretty cool, and then you get bored and you want to go start something
well,
new.
You make me an offer I can't refuse.
I had a pastor years and years ago, a great man in the faith. His name was John Wimber, and pastor a church called Vineyard Christian Fellowship. And he would call those of us that at the time were in training to become planters of churches. He said, we're the catalytic type. We love to pull things together, but we get bored fast. So we're always finding something fun and new. So that fun and new, actually, in your case, was shutting your time in Las Vegas with a young family and heading for Temecula, right?
That's correct. We at a certain point, we had it was really nice in Vegas. We were in a nice section of Vegas. The schools our daughters went to were very good. It's just, we got to a point where we realized, it's Las Vegas. I got 2 girls growing up here, it is Las Vegas.
Right.
So we felt like maybe we need a better atmosphere, a more family-oriented town. And we found Temecula.
Yeah, and Temecula was still a little bit, well, it's still burgeoning and then some, but at that time was nowhere near the almost 140,000 residents we have in the city limits at this time. So it was still percolating along. And of course, our wine country sure is. So yeah, so keep going there, because now we're talking about getting close to what you do now. You fell in love with our Temecula Valley.
Yeah, I really did. I mean, just the rolling hills and the vineyards. It was very nice. You can go out and you're driving in your car and all of a sudden you see a guy on horseback. It was like, I grew up in New York, a guy on horseback, and it's just nice and peaceful, and I kind of fell in love with it. My family did too. And again, it was really a family-oriented town. You felt safe. I can't tell you how many times I left the garage door open and went to sleep, wake up and everything's fine.
I still do that in my neighborhood too. And if you hear a little creak here, folks, we're going to tilt this microphone up just a little bit there. Okay. Now go ahead. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
You're good. There. Okay.
I'll just tip down a little bit. That's
yeah.
all. Yeah, so I felt very comfortable. It was really nice with the kids, but I fell in love with the area. Even when my brother came out, I mentioned to you, my brother came out. He does business in Italy. He looked at it, he said, this Temecula looks like Tuscany. The way the hills are rolling and everything.
Especially right now here in the spring after the rain we've had here in the last couple of weeks, everything's all nice and green, although that won't last all that long as we get closer to summer. But we've been told that many times, which is why we also grow a couple of Italian wine grapes here, Montepulciano and Aglianico, So We are feeling a beautiful, balmy breeze here in our Temecula Valley, and you can hear the cars going by. It's getting close to, I think, go-home time for a lot of people, and we're on the back side of the valley where people have found it's fast and easy to get in and out of the valley this way. So, all right, so here we are in Temecula, and we were going to look for when you kind of birthed an idea, which we're talking about right now, your Anco mobile apps, but bring us forward there. So here you are in our Temecula Valley watching a lot of the wineries grow up. And once again, kind of allied between the two of us, here you are. And in that time frame, roughly from 2004 to 2010, I created a website called Shop Temecula Wines. I used to sell all the wines of our Temecula Valley. And once again, I was so fascinated by what you're doing in your current web app that is very much akin, I never was a digital guy. I just paid others to figure it out for me. So, but you do all this stuff yourself, right?
Yeah. At this point, yes. I wanted to do something that was really easy to use, though.
Right,
something user-friendly. I started, just going out to wineries on my own. I would get there, the place would be closed. It was kind of a bummer. So I said, this has got to be solved.
Right.
And a lot of people just, there's a diverse type of people that come out to the wine country. You have old,
right,
young,
and in between,
and everything in between. So you have some people
and you forgot, and dogs too. We get lots
and
of
dogs. Yeah, dogs. The dogs don't use the app that much, but we'll work that in. But anyway, because not everyone is so adept in, using their phone and apps and things. So I wanted to make it nice and simple, and that's what it is. And you can find everything you need.
So let's visit a little bit of that. Now, as I'd mentioned before, folks, it's www.ANNCO.com. His company's Anco Mobile Guides. Now, it's going to be getting even more specific with specific app downloads and so on. But you can check out the site right now, and with the touch of a little button, you can punch up various categories, and it'll unveil for you all the wineries, a little map of the wine valley, all the different kinds of elements that are available around us, like the breweries and the distilleries. And as he'd mentioned, we want to run across the town. Who's still open after 5 o'clock? You can punch that up right there, and no guesswork now about which winery you're going to find open or not. And we get asked that kind of thing here at the winery all the time, and we kind of remember some of them, but there's no real official guide, at least prior to what you've done here. There is a little map that's been here in the valley for a long time, and he has a little chart listing who's dog friendly and has food places. But I don't believe it ever had the times on it, because that is something you got to keep up with. So let's talk about your specific app much more now, because that is the thing I'm excited about, particularly for those of us who are wine lovers all across the fruited plains, but particularly the fruited plains of Southern California. And that's the launch point. Now, you were telling me you have this kind of overall idea of Temecula to Tuscany. Now, that's a lot of
correct.
wine places here and in between. So you're starting here in Temecula with the first round.
Absolutely. And that's the grand plan, from Temecula to Tuscany. So anywhere you travel in the world, you'll be able to find what you need in wine areas in France and Mexico, anywhere across the U.S. And I'm putting together a club, a mobile club, so that you can get special offers and deals no matter where you go. You'll always be dialed in, and that's the grand plan, and it will come to fruition.
So under the development of what we look at online right now, and we were having some fun poking around on it, or I should say I was, because I wanted to make sure for this digital DOLT, yes, and there's some people in my family who would definitely validate that, LOL. And I found it quite easy to navigate. I love intuitive things. You touch the button and there it is. So let's talk in a little more detail of that, because like you said, it was in 2016 thereabouts that you kind of conceived the general idea of this, and here we are, 5.5 years later, and it has come to fruition. Once again, the entrepreneur in you has made things happen.
Yeah. Originally, it started out in 2016, but when your mind's active, sometimes you get a little distracted, and other things come in. I own another company called trucksales.com,
right?
And it's for heavy trucks and equipment and everything. And you get so I conceived the idea. I started working on it, but it took a while with all the other distractions. And then once COVID hit, now I was like a beached whale, stuck in the house, eating 6 meals a day. I figured, I got to do something here.
Now,
so
there's two ways to look at that. Like you said, beached whale, but there are other ways that you could work during the COVID shutdown for some of us, right? So
yeah,
it sounds
right.
like you made that a worthwhile time off.
Correct. I sat on my computer with a ham sandwich next to me and just kept working,
So let's talk about when you draw on putting together something like this. I mean, it's almost without speaking to be said, but all the years that you've been involved in marketing, it sounds like that has served as a great platform to draw experience from. To kind of know where to go with this. Although, as I'd mentioned earlier, there are a number of other similar kind of operations that have been kind of dabbling around here locally on the internet. So the guy who's the big fish is the winner. So but let's talk about, so in this case, getting the word out, which we're doing right now, and I find this such a fun app. And I want to talk about something else. If you're in the industry, okay, he has this unbelievably, I would have to say, unique and genuinely fun application, because those of us who serve wine to folks, we know that they're having lots of fun and sipping their wine, and it is the hospitality industry. And I've had folks come back and go, oh my gosh, we were having so much fun, and we got home and we realized we never left you a gratuity. So let's talk about, you have built something into this application and your website that wineries themselves may be interested in be involved in, or at least the wine servers themselves. So why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, well, that particular feature is coming shortly. It's in the process,
right? Mm-hmm.
And it's cashless tipping, because I know for a fact when I would go out, I don't carry cash anymore.
A lot of us don't.
I really don't.
Yeah.
So I get there, and Leroy's serving me. He's really great. He made it a lot of fun, and now I have nothing to give him. So this is going to be built into the app, that you can do a cashless tip.
Right.
Okay. It can be done from a QR code. There's a lot of ways it's going to ignite.
Right.
And
a number of hospitality places, they'll have some of those kinds of things built in for if you're making a sale or so on.
In a hotel.
Restaurants, if you want to leave a tip and so on. But the servers themselves, sometimes it's a big delay until they actually see that money, because if it has to go through their paycheck and all kinds of stuff like that. So,
but Leroy,
yeah.
if you go to a bar,
right,
and you're running a tab, you're going to get the tab, you put the tip on the tab,
right,
you're done. When you go out wine tasting, you buy a wine tasting ticket or whatever.
Exactly.
And now you paid with your credit card, now you're done, you have no cash. And so now the server gets stiffed. let's call it what it is.
And so you've come up with a fun way around that.
Yeah, and not only that, maybe you go to 3-4
right,
wineries, you are drinking alcohol.
Right.
So maybe you forget to leave a tip.
Right.
You get back to your hotel room. Because of the way I'm setting it up, you'll be able to know who served you, and you'll be able to tip them from your hotel room.
That's kind of fun.
Yeah, because you wake up and say, I had a great time.
Well, I've had that happen to myself. Now, I'm in the industry, so those of us in the industry typically, we're much more keenly aware of those things. And we try to be not just keenly aware, but very generous just because we work in the industry. But I've had myself a number of times when I was left and my wife will go, honey, did you tip the server? And I have to go, So that sounds like a very unique application in what is already a rather incredible user-friendly device. Now I'm going to back up just a second because our mouths are getting a little dry because we have this gorgeous wind that you can hear on the microphones blowing. Our beautiful Temecula Valley afternoons, it blows in that cool air and keeps the valley from getting too toasty hot. Although yes, we are in late winter, but yeah, here we are. It's a little the Bonnie Doon Vineyard 2021 Peak Pull, P-I-C-P-O-U-L, and they say you pronounce it Pickpull, P-I like P-I-K.
Yeah, it's kind of tangy. It's good.
Yeah. Well, its nickname out of France is the lip stinger, and you can kind of understand why because it's got a lot of lemon zest, kind of a light wine, but almost chiffon soft.
Yeah.
This is yum. Wow. And I have to tell you, this is a wine which has opened the door to the gentleman actually who has the brains up there at Bonnie Doon Vineyards. We've chatted a little bit, and hopefully in the future we'll be sitting down and talking about his operation. He's got a lot of wines in a number of higher volume productions, so he's in numerous retail places, something that a lot of the smaller direct-to-consumer wineries, particularly in Southern California, don't have quite the volume to be in that kind of a situation. But I thought this would just be a fun wine to share today. I just got it shipped to me, sipped it, and went, oh my gosh, I've never heard of this, and now I love it. So we thought we'd share that with you too. So John, what do you see now? Here you are. This is your launch point for the most part. And we mentioned the idea of Temecula to Tuscany. So on the heels of Temecula, which way are you growing up?
Well, moving down to San Diego.
Right. So there's a lot of wineries in the San Diego County.
And we're connected. Yeah. We're connected.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a lot of wineries. I also do breweries, distilleries. San Diego is the microbrew capital of America.
Amen. It is, absolutely. Now there are those, I think it's Connecticut or New Jersey or one of those East Coast little states claim that per capita thing, but in the last couple of years there are so many popping up microbrews in San Diego. I think they have captured the right to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's 105 or whatever it is wineries in San Diego.
And unlike our Temecula Valley, though, you've got to do some driving.
Yes.
Kind of like going up to Paso. They're spread out in various pockets of the county, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Same in Napa. You go up north.
Yeah.
They're not so close.
Right.
The nice thing here is you can go to one winery. I don't know. Should I mention the wineries?
You go ahead.
Yeah.
I mean we're talking about.
Give you an idea.
This is the Spill the Wine show. Wherever we spill wine, we talk about it.
All right, as long as I don't spill it on your clothes. Okay. No, I mean, you can go, for instance, maybe you can go to South Coast and you go wine tasting. You could walk through the vineyards and go to Ponte and go wine tasting. Then walk through the vineyards again and go to Weens and go wine tasting without getting in an Uber or your car. That's pretty unique.
It is. Yeah, there's not a lot of... and now we have close to 53 wineries here in the valley, and there's little pockets where some of them are kind of that close together, which is kind of fun. Usually more than 3 or 4 wineries in one day, and
You're there.
Well, yeah, now I go out and people are like, are you kidding me? And I said, yes, I do a sip and spit like professionals do because I want to taste every dimension of the wine without getting as inebriated as I might otherwise be. And you still, by that number of wines, your palate starts to get tired, you know. And by the end of the day, all the wines are kind of tasting the same. So let's talk about on your setup how people can make notes and track the wines they went, oh my gosh, when I was back at the beginning of the day, I really loved that wine, because that's going to be a fun little unique thing.
Yeah, absolutely. What I did on several of the wineries, I put a tasting list of the wines they have in the app. And now you can go through, and as you're tasting them, rate them, star rate them. All right, now this is not something that goes out to Yelp or anything else.
Right.
This is for
This is
you
for your own-
personally.
right, you can go
This
back
is for
and review.
you, so that you taste certain wines, you like it, and again, we go back to, okay, you go to 3 wineries. By the 3rd winery, you kind of forget the first winery. They had a red wine. I really loved it. I'm not sure what it was. So you go back to the first winery to buy a case of the wine, and you have to go through a whole process again of tasting different wines.
Right.
This way, you already have it set in your app. You'll know exactly what you really loved, what you weren't crazy about, and you can make decisions, and you don't have to rely on your memory or your taste buds. You'll know.
Exactly. And this is all one app where you can figure out what wineries, what breweries, what distilleries, other kinds of destination and hospitality things, and then record all of your favorite, tastings, whether that be wine or in this case some microbrews. Or there's a couple interesting things with distilleries, because California a couple of years ago created a new licensing category for micro distilleries, and they get to operate in very similar fashion to small wineries and breweries. So we're starting to see a lot of those pop up.
Yeah, they're starting to pop up. In San Diego County's got a host of them. And then you go back again, I'm saying Temecula to Tuscany. Well, you go to Kentucky, there's a lot of
Oh, yes. Whiskey
tasting.
Right? Yes.
Have you gone to Mexico? You go down to Mexico, you can go tequila tasting.
Yes.
I've done it. So that's all going to evolve into it's all going to grow. We're growing into it.
Right.
And so
you're kind of one of the guys that's on the front end of the curve there, I would dare say, although there's been, a number of other things. I mean, it's not totally revolutionary, but you're taking all the best parts and putting them together. And most people don't know it, but that guy named Edison, which we all think of light bulbs, they said, he invented the light bulb, and that's not correct at all. There were numerous other people who preceded him who created apparatuses that would generate light, but the ability of their portable affordability was not there, and they weren't efficient, or they took too much power. And he's the guy that took all of their research and, of course, did his own. We've all heard about the number of times he kept burning all the different items for filament. But when he discovered that, he took the best of all those parts, put them together, and wow, the affordable light bulb, and then the electrification of, all of the world began pretty much at the point of light. I mean, there's many other applications, but it was probably what led the way. And I'm just saying that because, a lot of times people get credit for putting things together that if there weren't others who basically did the free research, it wouldn't have happened.
well, yeah, I didn't invent the wheel here. And I always look at it, there's other people that do other stuff similar
Right.
and everything else. And people have said to me, well, John, there's competition. I said, yeah, this is America.
Yeah,
That's
amen. You
that's
figure
all
out
right.
which one.
Thank God, it's
throw it out
America.
there.
Anything you thought of is already being done in some form or fashion already. I'm just going to be better.
I got to tie that back to what we do in the way of wine grape farming all throughout America. I had a gentleman who visited, was quite astute in his wine background and knowledge, and he was from France. And we got into a discussion how he felt over there they have very strict guidelines as to what wine grapes can be grown in which region, and other dimensions very intricate about the production of the wine. And pretty much, in the New World and certainly in the United States, we grow the grapes and find out what works and what doesn't. We make it into wine and see what people like and what they don't, And we were in disagreement. I was like, wait, this is America. Come over here and plant your own grapes and figure out what worked, He felt that there's some grapes we're growing in our valley that don't make the best wine. He's absolutely right, but at least somebody was willing to take the whirl and see what they could do. We grow more wine grapes in the Temecula Valley than just about any other wine region in the United States. Over 50 different wine grapes that end up as what we call varietals once they become wine. And many of them that a lot of times people haven't heard. We do that here with our Alianico and some fun, yummy things. So what is it? Necessity is the invention. Is mother of invention. There we go. So the necessity is drinking wine. The mother of invention is the wineries, and we are the partakers, right? So
yeah, you would know better than me, but I heard someone had told me that certain areas in France, they don't water the grapes.
That's
it's
correct.
It's only what if you get rain, that's it.
Right, dry farming, and in many regions. Even our Temecula Valley, if you were just dry farming, there's a lot of particular variety of grapes that just would not produce enough fruit to bother with. There are other ones that would produce reasonable amounts of fruit, but once again, the quality could be in question. So the technology we now have for irrigating in precise fashion, and the other things we have from ground cover crops and different kinds of very, you might say, organic approaches that we do in fertilization and everything else.
Yeah.
Although we have guidelines as far as how to keep that safe, there are not limitations from the government that say we can't, farm it a particular way. At least that's our biggest battle, because sometimes they do try to get in that realm. But that's a fascinating thing, particularly in the old world. They're very regimented on the procurement of those original properties and what specific gets grown on them. And there are those that, have every right to love that. They grew up with it.
Yeah.
We're too spoiled, Yeah. Freedom's a great thing.
If you come out to the valley, you should go and take a wine tour of a winery. It's really interesting.
It's absolutely interesting.
It's unbelievable how they test the wines. They know exactly when it's ready. They have like a little laboratory almost.
Absolutely. We have one here on property. Mr. Chapin is microbiologist out of the medical field.
Yeah.
So we've had a laboratory since day one, so we don't have to wait for days for results to return, because that could affect maybe an adjustment we need to make waiting for that information. And he's always been able to do everything in real time. So
because most people think you put it in a barrel, you wait for 6 months, it's done. It's not that. So it's really interesting. So if you come
I can make an allegory. If anybody's ever planted a new lawn in their front yard from seed, if you just water it and do nothing else, and you just leave the weeds that pop up all over the place, you're going to have not the best looking lawn. And guess what? In an allegorical fashion, wine, as it's going through its aging process in the barrel, can start growing weeds, and you better figure out how to pull them real fast.
Yeah,
you got to nip the process in the bud, literally, and do the adjustments to it that are needed so that wine stays on target for in your mind's eye palate what you're expecting it to become.
It's an art form.
It is absolutely.
It is an art form.
And science as well.
Yeah, it's and that I really loved about it too. I like growing things. I like getting involved like that. But when I found out everything that goes into creating great wines, it's pretty exciting.
It is very exciting, and I'm going to use that as a cue to maybe some one right now is listening to the Spill the Wine Show for the first time, and if you go back to episode 10, I'll tell you how you can grow your own wine grapes in your backyard pretty much for free. I mean, right now we're in the bud break time. We're starting to see a little bit of the buds budding forth of the little leaves on the vines, but it comes as little canes or branches are popping out, and everything that's extant in what's going to happen in the vine for this season on every cane or branch is right there in that little bud point. And that's why we take cuttings and sprout them and plant them, so it makes sure you get exactly what's exactly in that vine that you took the cutting from. And so I'll direct you back to that, because I'll tell you, well, we're still in the time of just having finished pruned, and the cuttings are still moist and alive before they dry all up. You can get a number of different cuttings and turn them into your own little wine grape forest, as I would refer to it, in your own backyard. I have people take a look. I have pictures of my little wine grape forest while I'm getting them sprouted. So that's a little tease too. John Ferrera, thank you so much. I want you just give us a little wrap-up overview on your here and what's the best way for people to pursue the avenue of what you are doing.
Well, of course, go to www.anco.com, ANNCO.com. If you do it on a phone, a smart system will know it's a phone. It'll give you that look and feel you want. If you use your computer, you're going to get a little different view.
Right. A little more to it.
It's designed because you want to take what I do with you and take it around, and you're out and about, and that's what it's all about. And I am putting out an app version that you can download from the App Store or Google Play, right. And that's coming.
I'm looking forward to putting that on my phone. So.
All right, but I'm also, when you go and you use what I do, I want your feedback. Go to contact us. Send me. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think would be good to have in there. What am I missing? You're the best source of information I can get. And I want that. I want that feedback. So if you see something or you think something would be real cool or you would really enjoy it, please let me know. I'll do everything I can to put it in place. Unless it's something that's so far out there,
And let's face it, we do sometimes get those kinds of suggestions.
Yeah.
I would just say that because I've had some people say, why don't you grow this kind of grape? And I'm going, well, it wouldn't grow in this valley, but you have to be here and have tried it to know that.
Yeah, but it will grow on the moon if you do that.
Well, you're listening to the Spill the Wine Show podcast, yes, on a windy, blustery, beautiful, late winter, early spring here in Southern California in the Temecula Valley. We're sitting right on the lovely vineyard, just starting to go into bud break, luscious green wild oats growing up between the vines, and yes, a whole host of automobiles whizzing back and forth on Warren Road right over here, because although it's about a quarter of a mile between us and where the roadway is, with no vines growing up right now, the noise just travels right across the field, as you can hear. And the wind has made it feel really good, although a little noisy in the broadcast here. Excuse me, in the podcast, pretty close, right? We want to invite you to keep on tuning in, as they say. We have a lot more fun things planned out for this spring, and I'm working on right now some folks that are involved in investing in wineries, and we're going to talk about that dimension of the industry, just because I'm curious about it myself. How do you become a winery investor, but not necessarily involved in the everyday comings and goings? So, all right, it's the Spill the Wine Show podcast. I am your host, Leroy Wine Guy Guilford. My guest has been John Ferrera with ANNCO.com, ANNCO, and we will catch you next time around.